All right, well, good evening. Thank you all so much for being with us. I think I got this thing a little loud, huh? Oh, well, I adjusted it between sessions. Many of you know we had an earlier meeting here with the 3-year-olds, and it was the 3-year-old parents. We divided it up to give us a little more distance between individuals, but I appreciate each of you being with us this evening. Certainly, it is a privilege to have you here. So we're going to go through some things that I think will be helpful for you this evening and should help you in preparing for the school year. So let's start with a word of prayer, ask God's blessing on our time together, and then we'll get going. Our Lord, we thank you so much for the privilege of being called to be parents. Thank you for our children. Thank you for the rich blessings that they are to us. And Lord, I pray that you would help us to have a good school year ahead. Lord, I pray you would protect us from any sickness and disease, any dangers, things that are going around. Lord, help us to have a wonderful time together as we celebrate our children, as we see them learn reading and writing skills, certainly as they learn about the world around them and as they learn about you. Lord, I pray this would be a profitable evening. Help the information to be easy to understand and helpful for the year ahead. We love you, Lord. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, well, I'd like to introduce to you some of our staff members who are here. Those of you who haven't met me yet, my name is Brian Fry. I am the school administrator. I oversee the ministry of the academy as a whole. Many of you know we start with 3-year-olds and go all the way through 12th grade here in this building. So it is an exciting ministry, and I'm so glad to be able to be a part of it. Now, over to my left, we have a few people. I see Mrs. Mean must still be talking to somebody, so we'll pick her up in a minute. But we have Mrs. Greaves, our K-4 teacher this year. I think many of you have met her in the past. Appreciate having Mrs. Greaves back. Now, something that you may not be aware of this year, but Mrs. Kupayan is our K-5 teacher. She will also be having a combined class with some K-4 students in it this year, as dictated by our enrollment numbers this year. So some of our K-4 students will be in with her as well. So the two of them. My wife, Mrs. Fry, teaches some special. She'll be working an extended session this year, and appreciate her work in teaching there. We have Mrs. Kettlewood in the back. She is our school secretary. She is the one who, anything you need, she can get for you. She may not be able to actually deliver it, but she can tell you where to get it. Perhaps $1 million, I don't know, go to the bank. But I appreciate her faithful ministry in the office. She's the voice you're going to hear when you call on the phone. And she'll be available at the end of our time together. If there's anything from the office you need, if you have any documents you'd like to drop off, you can see Mrs. Kettlewood right at the end, and she can help you with that. I think I got all of our staff members who are here anyway. I don't see any others here right now. All right, let me go through a few things with you. I always describe this evening, it's a little bit of the old expression, taking a sip of water from a fire hydrant. And I know that's how it feels, especially if you were not here last year. I know many of you were here, but those of you who are new to us, there's a lot to take in. There she is. There's Mrs. Mean, our assistant administrator, and she will also be teaching along with Mrs. Haddon in the K-3 this year. So appreciate Mrs. Mean and her ministry. Now, the first announcement, this is important. The first day of school is next Wednesday, September 9th. School starts at 8:20 in the morning. So we're looking forward to getting back at it. We have not been able to have students here in person since March 12th. So we are really excited. This is a long layoff for those of us as teachers not to be able to be teaching. So we're really excited to be able to be back out, and we're so thankful for the progression that we've seen in the sickness around us, that we are doing so well in New York State. We believe it is our God's protection on us and his blessing. So we're so excited to be able to open in a way that we feel is safe and beneficial for our students. They need to be back with each other. They've been away from children too long. Maybe I'm just speaking for my own children. They need to be around some other people. And I think all of us are probably in that boat as well. Now, we do ask this, that on the first day of school, we know, especially those who weren't here last year, there's a tendency to want to stay with your children. The best thing you can do, drop them off, give them a hug, tell them you love them, and then let them play with their friends. Let them make new friends, let them have fun. If you hear them crying as you walk away, that's okay, they'll stop. Okay, and if they don't, we'll let you know, don't worry. But the best thing you can do is just leave them, and we'll let you know if there's a problem. Now, starting on the second day of school, and some of this is part of our COVID plan, but starting on the second day of school, parents will not be allowed in the classroom. You'll drop your children off at the door of the classroom. We ask that you don't go in. We're trying to minimize where the germs are, if there are any germs, trying to do that. If you come after 8:20, one of the things you'll see is this stop sign put up in the hallway. Those of you who've been here last year know my stop sign. Stop sign and I get to be good friends, I think, over the course of the year. But that stop sign will tell you that parents are not allowed even in the elementary hallway between 8:20 and 11:40. So if you come in late, please don't come in late. But if you do come in late, one of us, probably either me or Mrs. Kettlewood, will escort your child to the class. We'll meet them there. And that's for a lot of reasons. That's for security reasons. It's because, honestly, we don't want to have to run a background check on every parent who comes in the building. But it's also to minimize the disruption in the classroom. So we just ask that you'd help us with that. Now, that relates as well. Our front doors are locked during the school day. They lock around 8:20. So if you come in after that, you're going to have to press a little button. You saw it out there. It kind of glows. It's a soft red glow. You can press the button, and Mrs. Kettlewood, or perhaps me, probably her, will answer the phone and let you in when you tell us who you are. That is helpful, by the way. You get that Mrs. Kettlewood who say, "Let me in." No. Tell me who you are. Tell us your name. Tell us your child's name, something. We do have a camera there, so we can look and see you as well. But it's helpful for us just to tell us who you are, and we'll let you come on in at that point. We do ask that you don't prop the door open or give access to anybody you don't recognize. They can buzz into. I know it seems kind to hold the door for the next person. If you don't know they're one of us, let's just protect. They can push the button. And if that's you coming up, don't be insulted. Just push the button. We'll let you in. But we want to keep as secure of an environment as possible, so we do ask that. Just one thing, I'm not going to talk a lot about money tonight, but just a reminder that payments are due on the 10th of the month. And so for your account, there is a late fee after the 10th. If the 10th falls on a weekend, it's the next school day after that. So it could be the 12th or maybe even the 13th if there's a long weekend or something. You'll receive notification by email. In fact, you'll probably be getting one since today is the 1st. If you haven't already gotten it, sometime before you get up tomorrow morning, the system will probably be sending one out to you with your current balance, if you have any on it. But that is due. There's a $25 late fee. We don't want to charge you that. Just help us out with that. All right. Now, a couple things I want to direct your attention to the screen for a few minutes. The first thing is a reminder for those of you who've been here before, but it's something new to those of you who are new here, and this is our traffic pattern that we ask you to follow. Now, this is always a little hard to understand because the shape of the screen is different than the shape of the parking lot. The parking lot is rectangular and tall. But if you'd understand what we're going to ask you to do, this is kind of our entrance way. When you come in, you're going to make a hard left. Come all the way down and come down the far side. This is where we have a little shed over here that you've seen. There's a dumpster. I hate to use the dumpster as a landmark, but I guess it is. Over there. We ask you come in that way, and then that you come out the center aisle, and the center aisle should be one way. Now, there's a couple of reasons for this. It all really relates to safety, but our buses come in this way. I'm not sure how many buses we're going to have this year, but often we have 10 to 15 different buses that come in the morning and afternoon from districts all over our area. You don't want to be behind them, or really you don't want to be in front of them either. Okay, and they don't want you in front of them. So it's just a win-win to handle it differently and to come down this. I have a volunteer coming in from our church. He'll be helping direct traffic for at least the first couple of days. Just please honor the man in the bright vest in the parking lot. He'll be helping you get to the right place. Here's one of the things that often happens. By the way, there's a lot more parking spots than this makes it look like. There'll be a little spot like right here you're really going to want. And so you'll come in and like dart in, going the wrong way. I just went in a short distance. Please don't. Because you're going to meet somebody, and then I get the phone call, somebody complaining about that somebody misbehaved. Can you figure out who it was in a red Nissan Sentra kind of thing? They'll tell me. I'm sorry if you have a red Nissan Sentra. I just picked that. Actually, Mrs. Kettlewood, don't you have a Nissan Sentra? No, okay. It would never be Mrs. Kettlewood. But if you can just honor that, it'll make everything run more smoothly. And please only park where you're supposed to park. If there's a big cone up, don't park there. And like I have a couple X's here. This is actually the first two spots right here. Do you know why we blocked those off? Any of you ever driven a large, maybe just a moving truck, or you've driven a bus or something large? Here's what happens. These buses have to make a very sharp turn to come up here. If there is like an SUV stuck out right here, they can't make the turn. So we block off a couple of spots there to help our buses so they can make a nice turn and your bumper stays on your car, not on the parking lot. Okay, that's usually the way we like it to be. And we block off a couple spots at the front for the same reason. So parents who come out can do that. But every year I find somebody who pulls under the rope. There's a rope there, don't park there. There's plenty of parking spaces. And one thing we do remind people, there are a couple of handicap spots up here. Unless that describes you, please don't, unless you have the legal right to park there, please don't. Honor the people who really need that spot. And there are a lot of those out there that really do need to pull into those spots. I don't care if it's raining, snowing, you're only going in for a minute. Park in one of our assigned parking spaces that's marked. It's a real help for us. And here's the other thing, those handicap spots really aren't the safest for getting in and out of because you're gonna have to back up or sometimes there are children behind you. We really try to minimize their use anyway. We don't want people, as much as possible, backing up where children are walking by. I know there's backup cameras and everything else these days. We don't want the close calls though. So that's one of the reasons we block those spots off. All right, so if you can follow it, and if you have somebody who's picking up your child who's not here today, be sure to tell them that. Share this with them so they can be able to do this properly. We also have a 5-mile-an-hour speed limit in our parking lot. That seems really slow over the summer when no one is really here. But trust me, in the mornings, and there's lots of people here, it is plenty fast enough. And be aware of something. I know most of you know this. We have a neighborhood right over here to the right, like we'll be over here on the map. And over on the other side, we have Shaker Junior and Senior high schools. Lots of kids. You'll see them in the morning. They walk across our parking lot, cut across right about here. And yet we see some people who treat that right-of-way that we have, that long stretch there, treat it like it's a speedway. And they'll come flying in. And then they try to slow down when they see me in the parking lot. Here's the thing. The reason we have that slow limit is because people do walk across here all the time. And you can't see them easily. And sometimes, they're 13-year-olds and don't have the most sense in all the world anyway. And they'll try to play chicken with your car. Okay, so it's slow for a reason. It's not because we want you to go slow. We want to make your day take longer. It's for safety. So please honor the 5-mile-an-hour speed limit. Sometimes we find the school buses are the biggest offenders to that, though, honestly, out there. I have to talk to school bus drivers every year about it. And if you have a problem with a school bus driver, let me know. Tell me what the district name on the side is, and I'll call them if you have a problem with the bus. But we want to try to honor the limit as much as we can there. One quick note, as long as I'm up on the PowerPoint, I wanted to share with you a couple of thoughts about extended session. Our school office closes at around 4. Sometimes a little earlier, but roughly 4 o'clock or so, Mrs. Kettlewood leaves the office. If you call after that point and you don't get an answer and it's some kind of an emergency, your child's in extended session, you really need to get a hold of someone, we do have a phone number. Our extended session workers carry a cell phone. And this would only be if there's an emergency. You can text it if you want, if that's better. We really want our extended session staff to stay focused on the children. They're not supposed to use cell phones, obviously. We don't want them doing that. But we do want to have a phone. You're running late. Your child's expecting you at a certain time. But this is not to call to ask about an evening program. It's not to call to ask about, dress code question, that kind of thing. But somehow your child is here in extended session and you need to get a hold of someone to let them know someone different is picking up your child, something like that. We have this number available. Even put it on a QR code so you can get it even faster. But this is, if you need it, that number, that 852-8985, is available if you need it in the afternoons. Again, only for that time from like 4 to 5:30 or so. But they do carry, for emergency purposes, they carry the cell phone with them wherever they are, either out at the playground or in a classroom. So we want that to be available. And a reminder, extended session does close at 5:30. I put that on there. It is $1 a minute after 5:30. And honestly, don't take this the wrong way, but it doesn't matter the reason. Traffic could be backed up. You might be caught in a huge backup on 87. Oh, don't charge me. We have to. Our staff expects to leave at 5:30. They have arrangements. They have plans. So if you think that might happen to you, I encourage you to have a backup plan. Have another family member, have a neighbor, someone that you trust with your children that you can call. And of course, let us know. I'm going to come to that in a second. Let us know who that person is. That person has the right to pick your child up. And then if you can call them, then you don't have to worry about the $1 a minute after 5:30. So just please understand that coming in, that we really have to charge that. We don't want to. It brings us no joy to charge that, but we have to because of arrangements that our staff has and to protect them. So we have to do that. So, but have them pick them up by 5:30. It won't be an issue. Now, I want to talk briefly about some of COVID changes. And I don't want to get lost where I'm sharing so many details with you. Our full plan is available on our website. If you're a detail person and you want to read it, every school in New York was required to post to their website their reopening plan, and ours has been there for about a month. So if you want to know more details, I encourage you to go to lcany.org. Latham Christian Academy, New York, LCANY, you got it. Anyway, .org, and our full plan is available there. But I want to share some things. I'm going to skip a couple things that don't really relate to our K-4 program, because I'm going to use the same presentation on Thursday night when we have older children here for their orientation. But the number one thing to realize is that parents are primarily responsible for the initial health check of their child. It is your job to check your child every day. Listen, we all understand COVID-19, we're doing great in New York. Praise the Lord for that. We're one of the best states in the country after some really, really rough March and April. That right now, the South is horrible, California, horrible, but we seem to be somewhat protected here, and there could be a lot of reasons for that. I won't speculate on what all the reasons might be. I'm not a doctor, but I'm thankful that things are as good as they are. We're hearing reports from our governor that levels haven't been this low since back the beginning of March in several of the categories. So that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. We don't expect to have any cases. And in fact, this is, some of you saw the email I sent out about a week or so ago, that I was on a Zoom conference with the Albany County Commissioner, or the Commissioner, I guess that's her name, of the Health Department, Dr. Whalen. And she was sharing with school administrators in this area, and her words were, she would not be surprised if she deals with 0 cases in schools this year. That's how low everything is right now. They've got staff ready to do contact tracing and all this stuff and no contacts to trace. I mean, that's how good things are, especially in Albany County right now. Now, we have no idea if that's going to continue, but one way we can help it continue is by doing our part. And especially early in the school year, when we're waiting to see if this thing is really licked, I probably shouldn't have used that verb, but to see if it's really gone, while we're waiting to see that, we want to be especially cautious. And so what we're going to ask every parent to do is in the morning before you come in here to take your child's temperature. Now, we're going to do it here too, but we really don't want to catch it here, because then if there are some germs, they're already in our building. And then we got to call you to come back. We have to put your child away from other children. Nobody wants that. Take the child's temperature at home. Ask your child about symptoms. And be aware, out of these symptoms that are on here, the cough, shortness of breath, fatigue, that it's really this last one that the doctors are telling us they're seeing in children. If they're telling you something doesn't taste right, take that seriously, especially now, or something smells funny, Dad. It doesn't smell right. Take that seriously. They're telling us that among children, the number one symptom is no symptoms among children. They're asymptomatic. But from everything I'm reading, number 2 is this new loss of taste or smell. So I would just encourage you as a parent, if your child reports that to you, that's a good time to call your pediatrician and at least get a test, and that'll reassure everybody then. But I'm going to ask these symptoms, and I didn't bring one with me, but we have a sheet. You saw I sent it home to you. If you would like to pick some up tonight, Mrs. Kettlewood has them kind of in packs of 20, I think. So if you want to submit it on paper, you can do that. Every day, though, we're going to ask, at least for this initial start of the year until the state of emergency is lifted, that every day you record your child's temperature that you took at home and just sign to say your child has none of these symptoms to the best of your knowledge. Obviously, with 4-year-olds, we don't always know what symptoms they have, but at least to the best of your knowledge. And one reminder about fever. This means not treated with medicine. If you've given them Tylenol to reduce their fever, they still have a fever. Even if the levels drop down, please don't just send them medicated. Well, their fever went away. Well, if you gave them, children's Tylenol, yeah, it better go away. But the condition is still there that led to that fever. So please don't do that. That'll keep us all healthy. And I said this in the last session, think of others. That's why we wear these masks, right? To think of others. Imagine this. Would you want someone else sending their child in the condition your child is in? And if you just think of it that way, I think it's never easy to have to take off work at the last minute. I get that. But this is called, and every school in New York has to do this, self-attestation. You're attesting that your child is healthy. Every school is required to do this in some way in New York. One option that we have as well, though, is submitting it online, just a Google form. Those of you familiar with the very simple document that you can fill out each day. If it's easier for you to do it on your cell phone or on your tablet, than it is to fill out a paper form. You're welcome to do it. And I put the web address up there. I emailed it out, and I'll be emailing it again next week, again on probably Wednesday morning, maybe Tuesday evening. But a reminder that every child needs to bring in either that half sheet that you've signed or complete this online. And we'll be sure every child has this. But this daily report, either the paper one or online, telling us, as far as you know, your child's healthy. And that's what we want to make sure. Now, what is the other side? What happens? Maybe your child isn't as healthy. How does our policy work? Well, we're going to conduct, again, health screening is a little tough, especially with the younger ones, because they can't always express their symptoms. But, we have a set of these wonderful devices that we've all gotten to know, right? These little temperature things that, I don't know, I can point it at somebody and take your temperature. I don't think it works that way. But it does, we'll be doing this. In fact, for the first couple weeks of school, we're going to be doing it out here in the hallway. If you're here on time, at least, my wife will be out. She's going to be out here. We're going to leave some room so if it gets backed up, we can still keep some distance between each other. She'll be taking temperatures of those who come in. Just again, we don't want it to get to the classroom with somebody who's sick. We want it to be done early. Students with any relevant symptoms will be isolated and sent home. If your child has COVID-related symptoms, the state policy is 10 days they have to be home. So spikes of high fever. Now, there are two kind of exceptions to this. One, if your child has a condition like allergies or something that tends to come across like it might be a COVID symptom, talk to your pediatrician. Your pediatrician can give us a note that will say something, these conditions are normal for this child, this is likely not COVID. The other side is to get a COVID test. They're readily available now. There's no problem. The problem is waiting for the results to come in, right? Some of you have been in that boat. Getting the test, I don't want to say it's easy because it's not the most comfortable test. I haven't had one yet, but I understand from those who have, it's not the most comfortable test in all the world. My father describes it as a brain test through the nose. He's had 6 of them. He's helping New York State out. All 6 have been negative, so it's helping our numbers. My father gets one. He's in poor health, and so he's tested regularly. But we do ask that unless you have some kind of a clearance from a doctor, that you stay home for those 10 days. Now, if you get a test and get the results, again, that can change things as well, and that's kind of state policy. Now, we don't think this is going to be an issue. We really don't. But I want to go through so you're all comfortable and know what would happen if one of our students actually does test positive for COVID. I want you all to understand it's incredibly unlikely that this is going to happen. And we haven't had it happen. To the best of our knowledge, all the way back to March until now, even over the summer, now they might not have told us, but as far as we know, none of our families have had a positive COVID test. But what would happen? Well, a student who tests positive has to stay home for at least 14 calendar days. And that's the mandatory quarantine in New York State. The health department would give guidance, but the student's cohort may have to stay home. Now, this is a word we're all getting to know, right? What is a cohort? It's simply a group of students that are together during the day. We are doing our best this school year to maintain pretty strict cohorts with our student body. And what that means is we're not going to be combining classes for things like recess, lunch. As much as we can avoid it, your child's class will stay as a group. Because here's what would happen. Again, this is incredibly unlikely, but let's say that a student in Mrs. Greaves' class were to test positive for COVID-19. Well, her class then would be all affected. They would all be contacts with one another. So the other students would have to be quarantined for those 14 days, but the students in Mrs. Coupayan's class wouldn't have to be. And we could continue on with school because those students would not be affected. So this is why we're maintaining strict cohorts, and all schools are doing this. But I want you to understand, I don't want to make you nervous if something happens during the year and you're like, well, how come, it's not safe to send my child if they're, like say a 4th grader tests positive for COVID, how can I send my 4-year-old? Well, the two wouldn't interact at all. And that's why we can do this. And of course, we're going to follow the guidance of the health department on all of these things. So understand this is their guidance, their way of doing, of keeping us all safe, is to try to keep that down. Those with direct contact with the infected student would be quarantined for 14 days, but contacts of contacts don't have to be. If you understand that, how that works. Just because, in fact, here's a good example. If one of your children had to be quarantined, it doesn't mean that his sister would have to be. Now, you'd want to keep an eye for symptoms or anything like that, but it's not required to be a quarantine or even an isolation. So that's kind of how that works. Again, I don't expect this is going to happen, but I want you to feel comfortable that we have a plan, we have a working relationship with the Albany County Health Department, that if something happens, we're ready to interact, we're ready to get the answers we need, we're ready to get information from the experts on it. And the experts are, like I said, Dr. Whalen, her words, she does not believe she's going to see one case in an Albany County school. Now, I hope she's right, I'm praying she's right, but we need to be prepared just in case. And you understand, we're a very small school as opposed to something like Shaker. And we believe our students will be very safe here. Now, if this does happen, if a student has to stay home, either isolation or quarantine, which are different, right? Isolation means they have some of the symptoms of COVID but don't have a positive test. Quarantine is a positive test or a contact of somebody who's had a positive test. In those cases, though, we're going to provide limited remote learning. Now, those of you who were here last year, actually you would have been in the K-3 probably last year, but we have some video lessons available and some materials that we will make available so you can continue the work. It's not as good as being here. That's why we're not offering it just from the ground up, because we know it's not as, we had to do it last year for 3 months. It's not up to LCA standards in the way we'd like it to be. But that said, it lets you continue the learning with your child during that time. So we're going to be prepared for that. Our teachers are already working on it to be ready if for some reason your child has to stay home for an extended time, that we will give you tools to help stay up with his classmates. And so you can work with them, and we're going to give you some videos you can watch of a school that uses the same curriculum filmed in front of some of the best teachers in the country, that they're recorded teaching children, and you can do some of those same things with your children. So we want to be able to do that. Now, attendance policies don't apply to K-4, so I'm not going to spend any time on that really in this group tonight. That only applies K-5 to 12th grade. But we are going to, of course, relax attendance policies in that case. Now, we are going to ask our students to wear a mask during the day. We do plan to give the mask breaks when they're able to be physically distanced. And we're actually going to encourage students to play together. We believe that's important. Children need to play with one another. But what we're going to do then is ask that they wash their hands, sanitize their hands immediately after. And they'll have their masks on when they're playing together, and help us with that. Make sure your child has a mask that fits, that they're comfortable with wearing, these things. But we do want children to play together. We don't want them to say, oh, you have to stay 6 feet away from everybody. But we are going to say, after you've been close to another child, it's time to wash your hands. It's time to use the hand sanitizer. We're going to do our best to prevent outbreaks while still allowing children to have the time that they need to be children, right? And to play together and be together. As far as the masks, we want them, anytime they can't be apart, they want them to wear it. Now, at their tables, we have set up, again, the classrooms aren't ready to be open tonight. I'm sure we could show you one of these if you wanted it. But we've basically made some barriers that we have on the tables, so that students, especially if they want to take their mask off, they need a break, get some fresh air, whatever, that we can, that they are, so they're not going to sneeze on each other, cough on each other, those kind of things. But they can still see the teacher, still see each other without hopefully breathing all over each other. That's our plan anyway and our hope. Now, physical distancing, we said the tables have dividers. Now, your kids don't have desks. We are going to avoid the long lines in the classroom. And during nap time, we're doing our best to arrange cots. And we're going to have, I'm thinking, it'll actually be well over 6 feet between heads, certainly, as we set them out. But related to that, actually, this doesn't come there. This comes up later. But we will be sending home their the blanket or the sheet you put on their cots. We're going to send that home every day for the near future. It's up to you if you want to wash it, if you just want to send it back, or if you have a set, you may want to, okay, we'll take Mondays out and put Tuesdays in. That's up to you as a parent how you handle it, but we're going to send it home so you have your choice. Plus, we don't really have a way to store it here where it wouldn't be in contact with someone else's for at least some of the time. So I'll come to more of that in a minute. But we will be regularly sanitizing any equipment that's used, including playground equipment and all that, between each cohort that goes out. Classrooms, we're going to keep windows open as long as we can, even if we're running the heat and the window is open at times. We know fresh air is one of the best ways to beat this thing. So we're going to be getting as much fresh air as we can in our classrooms. We're having kids play outside as much as we can. Obviously not when it's 10 below, but we'll be getting as much as we can, getting people, the children outside. Now, I mentioned this earlier, but students will be kept in their limited cohort as much as possible. So if any preventative isolations are necessary, only that cohort would have to be isolated, not the entire school. Recess and most activities will be held within that cohort. Now, I know when it comes to K4, many of you are full day. And I just want to make you aware of something so you know coming in, that at 11:45, and again sometime around 3, maybe closer to 4 o'clock, but they're going to be, the numbers go down, and so they become part of a different cohort at that point. So they would be exposed to some other students. And that's of necessity because our numbers are dropping at that point. We can't keep every teacher here until 5:30, obviously. It's just not doable. So if that is a real concern for you, that you don't want them exposed to any other students, I would say be sure they're picked up at the 11:45 or by about 12:10 or so when that initial dismissal happens. Understand they will be put with another group. Now that cohort, a new cohort will still be limited, if you know what I'm saying. In other words, they'll be put in the same group every day, but it will be, for example, some of the 4-year-olds, the two groups of 4-year-olds might be put together. I don't know how exactly that's going to work. Actually, may not affect a lot of them. But at the 3:15 to 4 o'clock time, you'll be put with all of the students that are remaining in the building. Will be put together at that point because our numbers we expect to be so low at that point that we only need one staff member. So be aware of that, and if that is a concern to you, just know that's how it's going to work, and come and talk to me. I can help you with that. Now, one of the things, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to ask parents to drop their children off at the door of the classrooms, but please don't enter the classrooms. The fewer people that are in the classroom, the better, and that's what we're going to try to do in that case. So those of you who have been here last year, you might remember if you got here before 8 o'clock, you sent the children to the gym. We're not doing that, at least to start the year with. Our teachers will be in the classroom starting at 7:30, which is the earliest you can bring your child. You'll go directly to your child's classroom, and you'll drop your child off at the door of the classroom. So we're not using the gym, we're using the classrooms. And again, in the afternoon, if you come in and you need to go to the classroom, you'll check in with Mrs. Kettlewood. If she sends you down to the classroom, we just ask you knock on the door and wait for the teacher to come. Don't enter the classroom, at least not until we can get through this COVID mess. And of course, if you come in the morning, you have a child has a doctor's appointment or something like that, you check in at the office and we get your child for you in the morning anyway. Art and PE supplies won't be shared. Playgrounds will be sanitized after every cohort's out there. We know God sanitizes it well with the sun and wind, but we're going to do some extra sanitizing as well out there. And common areas will be cleaned and sanitized frequently throughout the day. So that's part of our plan to make sure we keep things as safe as possible. One change this year, especially those of you who were here last year, we know birthdays can be very special days, but at least for now, we're asking you not send in treats for the entire class right now. It's just not a good time for that. And it's not that we think your home is dirty. Please don't come away thinking that. And we don't think that about each other. It's just why take one more chance? And if it's something we can do that's easy. So for this point, for birthdays, we're not going to allow food to be brought in from homes and brought in. Now, we're working on some plans, and some of the teachers have some really interesting ideas to make sure birthdays are still special. So if your child has a birthday early in the school year, talk to your child's teacher. We have some ideas to try to still make it special, and we'll work with you to do some things like that. By the way, one note while I'm thinking about it, I know every school's a little different on this, but we do expect your child still to wear the uniform even on his birthday. It's not a dress-up day kind of thing like some schools do. But we're going to really ask, though, that nothing be sent from home to come into school. This affects our snacks as well. In the past, we've asked you to bring a snack for the whole class. We're not going to do that this year. All of our students will have a snack time mid-morning. We ask that you send a healthy snack for your child every day. Even if your child's getting picked up at 11:45, they're still going to need a snack mid-morning. So send it. Remember to send anything they need, like if they need a spoon or a fork for it, send the spoon or fork in. But just remember those things. It needs to come from your home for your child. No sharing, no dividing things up. It's just going to be better. And I think we all know that. We still want to make their birthdays special, make other events special, but we're not going to share lunch, food, those kind of things either. We are going to teach, especially our 3 and 4-year-olds, how to wash their hands and use hand sanitizer properly. I'm assuming you've already taught your children that, and that's a good thing, but we're going to make sure we're all on the same page with it. We're going to really spend some time on that. We'll have regular schedules throughout the day. And again, as I said earlier, if you want to read the full plan, you can go to our website, and that's there. That doesn't have anything to do with you guys, the last slide, unless some 4-year-olds are playing volleyball now. I don't think our volleyball team has quite gotten to that point yet. So that's COVID-19. I went through it very quickly. That is definitely the abbreviated form. I will be down here at the end. We have kind of a big group, so rather than taking questions from the group, if you have individual questions or concerns, come and see me at the end. And I'll stay here as long as we need to answer them. Our teachers can answer questions as well. Let me go through a couple of things quickly here, not necessarily COVID related. Number one, you received in the July mailing, a form that looks like this called a Statement of Cooperation. If you have not already returned it, please do so. If you've lost it, see me or Mrs. Kettlewood. We both have more copies of this. But this is basically just a few things that we need to make sure we're on the same page with. And let me just quickly, I'm not going to spend any real time on this, but remember your child has to be completely potty trained to attend here. That doesn't mean they never have an accident. We understand, especially in a new environment, even 4-year-olds, it can happen. That doesn't mean they're not potty trained. It means they're children. We get that. But we do need to make sure that, remember, they can't be wearing pull-ups, can't be wearing anything like that. They have to be potty trained. They need to be able to use the toilet unassisted. Again, we're not a daycare. We can't really help them use the toilet. I would encourage you, to let them maybe on Monday or Tuesday, depending on your family's plan, put them in their uniform for a while. Get them used to using the restroom in their uniform. Even if your children were here last year, it's been since March. So it might not hurt. If those of you who have daughters and they might be in a jumper with where they might wear leggings or something like that, again, that's a little harder for some of our little girls to get used to if they don't normally use that. So let them practice using the restroom. That's a good thing to do in their uniform. Again, we ask the boys, we require belts for our older children, but not at this age yet. Wear the elastic waistband, because taking their belt off could be the difference between making it to the bathroom or having an accident. So we want to do our best to help them. And elastic waistbands can really help them. But again, I'd encourage you, sometime over the next week before school starts, put your child in the uniform for a day, or at least a morning. And have them get used to using the restroom in that, so if there's any issues, you can find it now. And that'll be helpful for all of us. But it has to be, and the next thing, changing topics totally, they have to be able to eat completely unassisted. That doesn't mean we don't help open a Go-Gurt for them or something. Of course, that's not what we mean. But we can't sit there with a fork and feed them, okay? One of our teachers will probably be watching 12 or 13 kids during lunch. They can't go and feed them. So I just want to make sure we're on the same page. We can't do that. We're not going to insist that they finish their food. We're going to give them enough quiet, uninterrupted time. If they're hungry, they're going to eat. But we just ask, don't call the teacher upset because your child didn't finish a lunch. We'll send it back. You'll know what didn't get finished, and we'll work that out and get that adjusted. And then a reminder about the time that we start at 8:20, that we're not a daycare. It's not drop off whenever you want. We are a school program. When children come in consistently after 8:20, it doesn't just hurt their education, it hurts everyone in the class. Because what happens when a little kid comes in, everybody else is working on stuff at their, and that's a good thing. We don't want to discourage that. We want them to be friendly to one another. But we also want them to be able to learn what they need to. So we do need to insist that you're on time each day. So if you haven't filled this out yet, come and see either me or Mrs. Kettlewood, and we'll get you those. I've just put it away. The other form you'll be given tonight is a form, this grid form. If you've been here before, you know this. We call it a verification form. I just want to point out a couple of things about this form that are really important on it. First of all, make sure your email address is right. Mrs. Kettlewood tries very hard to get your handwriting and figure out from the application to make sure we have the right email address. But some of you, your R's and N's look an awful lot alike. The O's and zeros, they're tough. So read this. If there's any changes, make it on there. So email address is one thing to check for sure. The other thing is the people who can pick your child up. We'll have mom and dad listed, and then there'll be others if you have from previous years. If you want to add anyone to that, please put their name on here. In extended session, we will check IDs until we get to know people. We'll ask for a photo ID to pick your child up. So we want to make sure the name, here's literally how it works. We have a computer there. When you come to pick your child up, we put the child's name in, and all of the authorized pickup people come on the screen. And our extended care worker has to choose the name of the person picking them up so we have a record of who picked up that child. They can't add a new name to that list there. It has to already be in the computer. This is how it gets in the computer, is from this chart. So if you would add any names to that. The other thing I'd recommend, and this depends kind of on your individual situation, but if mom and dad both are in a situation where sometimes you can't answer your phone at work, it'd be great to give us a third person that we could call that might be more available during the day. Again, maybe you have a relative in the area or just a good family friend that if your child's sick or something gets banged up during the day or something and we need to call somebody, it's good to have that number rather than if you're at work and can't answer your cell phone at work, for example, which is frequent today, right? Many of you may have jobs where you're not allowed to answer your phone at work. Give us another number to call. I know Mrs. Kettlewood will really appreciate that if she has to call somebody else. So that's on here. Now let me tell you a couple things you can ignore on this sheet of paper. I don't care who your child's doctor and dentist are. I'm not calling your child's doctor. You can leave that blank. You don't have to fill that in. Another thing, it asks at the top about releasing family information, like, do not publish we don't do that. That is our policy. No matter what this says up here, we don't give out your family's information. So you don't have to worry about that. That is our school policy. One other thing on this paper, it doesn't really a blank for it, but if you have a diet preference for your child, for example, your child doesn't eat red meat or doesn't eat pork or has a medical allergy to something like a bee sting or something like that, could you just write that on here, maybe even on the back, but just make a note with it, and we'll get that in your file. If you were here last year, we probably already have it. But again, if you have either a diet preference or a diet allergy or some other medical allergy, this is a good spot to write it. If we have more questions, in other words, there's not enough information on here, we'll call you. But at least give us a heads up, and this is a great place to put that. If everything is okay on this, if you would still initial it, sign it, and just write okay or all right or something on here and give it back to either Mrs. Kettlewood or your child's teacher, that would be a huge help. That way we know we've checked this and it's okay. So these are here. The only exception would be if you have a child who's older than K4, a sibling, we have it with the oldest child's teacher. So some of you have an older child that's in elementary or secondary here. Come Thursday to get this. But otherwise, that's there. All right, let me just make sure. A couple of quick notes. We do ask, keep in mind the time your child goes to bed. Children really need a good night's rest, and it's helpful to them. Most children this age would probably be in bed by 8 or so during the school year to get enough sleep to be up the next morning. So get your child that good night's sleep. You know what? It's been since March. We might have all gotten in some, the Fries have gotten in some bad habits anyway. Maybe nobody else has, but at least our family probably has gotten in some bad habits. I'd encourage you, get your child to bed on time. It really does make a difference in the education. If you have medication, your child, gets an infection during the year and has to be on amoxicillin or something. It happens to everybody, right? If some of that has to be administered during the day, you do need to send it in its prescription container. So you're like, I have to divide some up. You keep the unlabeled part, okay? You need to send in the part that's labeled from the pharmacy to us. We don't have a school nurse here, but I'm telling you, I think Mrs. Kettlewood, if we give her the nursing test, I think she would pass all the experience she has. We can follow the directions on a prescription bottle, and we'll do our best to help. It needs to be refrigerated. We can refrigerate it. That happens with antibiotics at times. They have to be kept in the fridge. But just send it in. It'll go to the office. We keep it in a locked container, and we will administer it as best we can according to the directions. But it does need to come in the original bottle that came from the pharmacist. All right, I already talked about snacks, birthdays. Reminder, please don't send toys in. I know it's hard if your child plays with a toy in the car, and you're like, now you got to give it back, and there's crying in the hallway when you take the toy away. But we don't want, so many bad things can happen with your child's toy in the classroom. So no toys sent in, just keep that in mind. Keep in mind what's put in the backpack. We don't want heavy books or things like that in their backpack. Here are a couple quick things about dress code. Let me talk about that just briefly. We do recommend Velcro shoes, unless your child is like a real prodigy and can tie his shoes faster than you can. I'd recommend Velcro shoes for children, or a stretchy kind that they don't have to tie. They're not ready for that yet. I recommend you label clothing with permanent marker. I don't know how they get separated from so many clothing items. But remember, by definition, the uniform means everybody's wearing roughly the same thing. We're not going to know it's your child's unless there's a last name in it or something like that. So take it, put in marker, and we'll get it back to you if it gets separated. We don't recommend that boys this age wear belts. Like I said earlier, elastic is better. Girls, when it gets cooler weather and they might want to wear tights under their jumper, they do have to be black, blue, or white solid colored. Those are the only ones allowed. They can't wear jeans below it, that kind of thing. Leggings are allowed, but black, blue, or white. However, keep in mind this, we do keep our classrooms warm during the winter. Just because it's cold outside doesn't mean they have to bundle up for school. Put them in a thick coat, whatever, on their way in. If it's snowy and wet out, put them in boots, but have the sneakers for them to change into when they get here. And then take their coat off. We don't want them all hot and sweaty during the day. We keep the classrooms plenty warm. So again, as you're dressing them in the winter, keep in mind, they'll be inside during the day at that point. So that's helpful for us as well. Now, it is important. I know we're dealing with 4-year-olds here, but 4-year-olds still can have accidents. They can still rip their clothes. We do need to have a full spare set of clothes. Now, what we asked, Mrs. Greaves is my model over here, that you send them in a 1-gallon Ziploc baggie that you get. You probably have some in your kitchen somewhere. This is perfect. Put everything in there in one baggie with your child's name on it and send it in by the first day of school. Please, by the first day of school, that's the day they're most likely to have a potty accident because there's so many changes and they're not sure. And even though we tell them to go to the bathroom, sometimes they don't. So you understand, don't put it off by the first day of school. Now, a couple of quick notes that will help out about that. Number one, it has to be a uniform. It can't just be play clothes. We don't want them to be, think about it, they have an accident and then they change into play clothes, they're different than everybody else and we've drawn attention to that. And we don't want to draw attention to the poor child who has an accident. But you're like, oh, I don't want to go buy another uniform. Guess what? You may not have to. Down in what we normally call our lunchroom, not going to function much that way this year, but off of the gym, we have clothes that people have returned from previous years. They've been laundered, sorted, folded, and they're in at least reasonably good condition. They are great to use as your spare set. At the end, we're going to dismiss you to the gym. Our teachers will be in the gym. They'll show you. The lunchroom is just off of the gym there, and we have a lot of gently used clothes available there. I'd encourage you to get a set that's what you would put in the baggie there. Now, a couple things to remember. Number one, it should be a complete change of clothes. I know sometimes it may be easy to think about this, but if they have an accident, obviously their undergarments are affected. They need to have undergarments in as part of that baggie. The other thing that sometimes parents tend to forget are shoes. Again, if they have an accident, their shoes are probably going to be soiled as well. Now, I wouldn't send in their nicest shoes because hopefully they're just going to sit in the classroom and never get used. That's our hope. So maybe a pair that not they've grown out of, but they're a little beat up or whatever. That's the place, that's the time you can put it in and put it in the baggie with shoes there. Very important. And by the way, if they have an accident, what we're going to do is put the soiled clothes in that same Ziploc baggie and send it back to you. That's a good way to keep everything from smelling poor bad or anything like that. It's zipped up in the baggie and sent home to you. If that does happen, remember to send it back the next day, another set or this whatever cleaned, because we obviously don't want them to be caught without a set here. So please keep that in mind. And as we're into this year, this doesn't really relate to having an accident, I suppose, but a spare mask is probably a pretty good idea or two for your child to have. We'll do our best so that they stay on your child. There's been talk like people who are putting them on lanyards and things like that, which is fine if that's something you want to do, but keep in mind that that lanyard ought to be washed every now and then as well. Just, think about that's going to get spat on and everything else too. So if you decide to use that, which is fine, to attach it to something, I think of the way we used to do with our child's pacifier when they were young. You attach it so they doesn't go anywhere when they spit it out, it's stuck to them. I'm not always sure how sanitary that was either, but there were some scary things with that. But we're trying to avoid spreading disease, so that's an option, but have something ready for it. The other thing, and Mrs. Greaves will demonstrate, is a water bottle. One of the things we have done this year is we're going to discourage water fountain use. We're not going to use it, but we do have a water bottle filler. So if you have a spill-proof, these are great, spill-proof containers. You can come look at hers later if you want. Is that your daughter's, actually? That's Giovanni's. Mrs. Greaves has a daughter in K4 this year. So she is a teacher and a parent this year. So she's ready to go on that. But there's the great water bottles you can pick up. They're not even that expensive. Few dollars, $3, $4, something? Oh, that was $9.99. Okay, maybe I got mine a little too cheap. Maybe that's why mine's still spilled. Anyway, take a look at it if you want, but and we can refill that here. We, of course, have all our water fountains are filtered, and they are, the city water is pretty good, all that as well, but we have that here so they can refill it. But please have those for your child. All right, a couple quick notes. If your child's going to stay after 11:45, we call that extended session. For our K4, there's full-day students. We do ask maybe bring a coloring book or something they like doing so that they can color or do something like that. Let's see, what else do we have for that? Dress for outside as much as we can. We're going to go outside. So, that's the great way to beat this virus is fresh air. So we want to get air moving and all that. So, when it gets too cold, we're obviously not going to. But we are going to go outside as much as we can. You don't need long sleeves or sweatshirts or pants under skirts on hot days. We don't want students to get overheated on those hot days when they're playing outside. When it gets cool enough, we'll tell them to put the jackets on, of course. Remember that, I know one of the things that happens. They haven't been around children a lot. You're going to pick them up. Let's say you pick them up at, 12:45 or something out at the playground. Oh, Daddy, can I stay? I'm having so much fun. We ask this, please do take them at that point, even if they ask to stay longer. As long as they're in the playground, we're responsible for them when they're in that area, so we will continue billing until you take them away. We have to continue charging during that time, so we'd ask that you would do that. And then please, we have every year parents who let their children run across the parking lot. We do our best, as you've heard me say already, to keep our parking lot safe. But please hold your child's hand, get him to the car safely. It'll be a big help. All right, one last thing here. The nap time that I wanted, Mrs. Greaves will be my model for here. The children will take a nap for about 1:30 to 2:40 roughly. It depends a little bit on the age and the class they're in. Each child will have a cot assigned to him, a cot they'll sleep on. That cot will be sanitized, of course, each day. I encourage you to, though, to have a comfortable blanket for them to use. Now, a couple things about this blanket. We don't need the huge puffy blanket. They're very comfortable. These cots are comfortable for children. I wouldn't want to sleep on one, but children are very comfortable on them. Excuse me. So what Mrs. Greaves has here is a good idea of one size to use. Notice it's not real thick and it's not huge. The ones that are designed either for a crib or a toddler bed are really ideal. We don't need the huge ones. If you have some old crib blankets you used to use years ago, this might be a time to pull it out. They actually work really well for cots. And then the other option is simply a sheet. Now, again, I'm not talking about, because this is still September. It's going to be warm. We're not worried about them being too cold. Literally, a sheet will work great. We ask that you don't send pillows. I know you think, oh, my child needs a pillow. He actually doesn't. They'll be fine. And here's the thing. We don't have any way to store that. So like I said, we're sending these home every day. And your child has to be able to fold it up and put it in his backpack, that clear backpack that we ask you to purchase. So it's got to go in there, as Mrs. Greaves is demonstrating. And since we are sending them home every day, at least as long as the COVID situation continues, we'll be sending them home every day. We hope to get to a point where we send them home once a week. But for now, it's going to be every day. And a reminder that I meant to say this as far as extended session. When you leave, your child may want to play on, we have 2 different playgrounds. They may want to play on one of them. We ask especially this year, at least, that you don't do that, because we'll be sanitizing between every cohort. So if your child, oh, Daddy, can I just play on the playground? And you think, well, there's no kids on it. It's probably okay. We ask that you don't do that because for that reason. We're really trying to, even with playgrounds, give it breaks, get 10 minutes between every group with sanitizing touch surfaces and all that. So just help us out with that. All right, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and send our teachers to the gym. There'll be bins in there. If you brought anything you want to turn in, there are information sheets for you, so please stop by and see them. You probably have a verification sheet, again, unless you have an older child as well. You'll have that. You can go to those used uniforms that are off the side of the gym as well. Take what you can use. We do ask you keep your children with you. The classrooms are not open yet. In fact, today was the first day for our teachers to report to work officially. Most of them have been here, but today was the first official day of work. So we're still getting the classrooms ready. They're not ready for anything yet down there. So please keep your children with you. Be careful in the gym. There's really not much out, but there are some rolled up tarps at the far end of it. I just wouldn't want anybody getting hurt on those. And one other thing, this is just a quick visit with your teacher. If for some reason you need to talk, you have some special situation you want to talk to your child's teacher for longer about, we just ask that you set up an appointment. We'll be happy either in person or by phone, whatever. We can set an appointment up, but let everyone, because you don't want to hold somebody else up that needs to talk to the teacher as well. So it's a good opportunity for that. And of course, as always, unfortunately, please keep the masks on and keep physically distant from one another so we don't have any problems there. And maybe in about 20 minutes or so, I'll come through if you're still here and say, teachers, we got to be back here tomorrow morning again. We're back at work. So we don't want this to be a late night for any of us. But I certainly appreciate there's been a lot of information. Excuse me, I feel like I've just shared a ton of stuff with you. And I appreciate you listening so carefully. I'm looking forward to this year. And I know I've given you all of this stuff, and some of it is a little like, oh, what if this happens? I am so confident that this is what we need, at least what my children need, and I think it's what a lot more children than that need. My kids need to get back in school. They need to be back around other children. I need them to be around other children, not me, for a while. I think we're all in that boat together since March. This is going to be a great school year, and I'm really, really excited about what's going to happen this year. All right, let's have a quick word of prayer, and then we'll head out. Our Lord, thank you for this time. Thank you for all we've been able to learn and discuss today. I pray that our times of fellowship as we spend some time together would be sweet. And Lord, we dedicate this year to you again anew and ask that you would encourage us and teach us what you have for us to learn through it. Please bring us home safely according to your will now, we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, thank you very much. If you don't know where the gym is, Mrs. Fry is going to go that direction. Those of you who do know, you'll see. But just out any of these doors and around to my left, that direction, and you'll see the gym doors there where the teachers are. Please pick up an information packet from the teachers as well. Thank you very much. Hey, I am well. Let me just turn that off. Yes. You know what? It works out well that Mrs. McVeigh is here tonight. Why don't you just let her talk to her and Jim? Because she's got a K-4 kids who puts up a little bit tonight. So it works out. Go see her. For K-5 is not. I would say if we're a little older, maybe, because there are a few other things for the elementary age. But no reason. For K-5, just talk to her and let her know tonight. And I don't know if she has the packet or anything ready. But she can at least let you know. Absolutely. No, that'd be perfect. Same you, Trent. And you're in the same thing together.